Everyone has been attempting to predict Loki's Dare fruit. I mean, I've heard it all. The majority think it's the Fenrir fruit, a mythical wolf who is prophesied to bring Ragnarok. Others think it's the Jörmungandr fruit, a mythical snake who is a popular figure in Norse mythology. I've even heard the theory that Loki's fruit is the Elbaf fruit, which apparently is the god which the giants pray to. Shout out Mr. Morge for that one. That certainly is a creative one. Although I do think these are very good guesses, I believe the truth is actually much more simple. I mean, extremely simple. See, Loki's Dare fruit is not at all a mythical Zoan, and I'm not only saying this because I am tired of seeing Zoans in the story, which is also true, but the true reason I know it's not a Zoan is that Loki himself has already told us what his Dare fruit is. Where and when, you might be thinking? Well, in Loki's first words, he told us, "I am the sun god who will bring about the end of the world." Now, we know who the real sun god is, and that's Luffy. Luffy has the only sun god mythical Zoan. So why exactly would Loki see himself as that sun god? Well, one could say that Loki is just adopting the popular name of the sun god from Elbaf lore, just to give his title a bit more allure and prestige. But I doubt that's really the case. See, I have a theory that Loki believes he's the sun god because he quite literally has the powers of the sun. Yup, that's right. I believe that Loki has none other than the sun fruit, a Logia type Dare fruit that can quite literally give you the powers of a star. Sounds absolutely broken, I know, but allow me to explain why this Dare fruit has been foreshadowed ever since Dressrosa. But before I dive in, I want to preface this by saying I am not the first one to come up with this idea about Loki's fruit. I am simply the connector of all the dots to this great idea. Firstly, I want to shout out Worstin from Twitter, who was the first to piece together the idea that Loki's glowing eyes may be a hint to him having light or heat based powers. Next, I want to shout out my personal favorite YouTuber of all time, Tekking, who literally guessed that Loki may have some form of energy/nuclear Logia. So shout out to those great thinkers. Most of this theory will be piecing together the evidence from this profound idea. By the end of this video, you'll not only be convinced that Loki has the sun fruit, but you'll also realize how Oda has been planning this from the very beginning. So let's start off with how well Oda has been foreshadowing this. In Dressrosa, Hyrule was looking for a powerful Dare fruit so that he may become the king of Elbaf, which suggests that having a powerful Dare fruit may be the custom of the royalty of Elbaf. Now fast forward to Loki, who is apparently Hyrule's brother, who was also in pursuit of a legendary Dare fruit. But it's not only in their desire for strong fruits that we can find a similarity between these two, but it's also their specific choice of Dare fruit. It's quite interesting that Hyrule was chasing the Mare no Mi, especially if you factor in the idea that Hyrule may have wanted to compete with Loki. Now, why would Hyrule want a flame-based fruit to compete? Well, perhaps Loki, his brother, also had a flame-based fruit. This is what I think is exactly the case. Loki did have a flame-based fruit that may be far superior to the Mare no Mi, which would make so much sense if he indeed ate a sun fruit. Now, the foreshadowing doesn't stop there, because we also know that the giants of Elbaf literally worship the sun. Now, when you combine that with the idea that Loki's Dare fruit is meant to pass down through Elbaf royalty, it makes even more sense that they would pass down a Dare fruit that's related to what they worship, the sun. Now, let's move on to the narrative implications for Loki having the sun Logia in Elbaf. What's interesting here is that Loki stated that he will bring about the end of the world. Now, would this be possible with a Fenrir fruit or a Jörmungandr mythical Zoan? No, I don't think so. Although these mythic beasts are indeed powerful in their world, I doubt they would have truly world-breaking capabilities when adapted to the One Piece verse. But you know what power would have world-destroying capabilities in any verse? A sun-based power that can produce nuclear energy. Loki may literally want to burn down the world, and he just may be able to if he can truly harness the power of a star. But speaking of burning the world, there's another piece of foreshadowing in Elbaf that hints at Loki having a flame-based power. See, in the beginning of our mini Elbaf chapters with our fake sun god, we get some interesting piece of dialogue. A random citizen is talking about a fire spreading to the fake Yggdrasil tree. He said, and I quote, "If the flames spread to Yggdrasil, the country is done for." See, this sounds like a very apparent foreshadowing to me that the real Yggdrasil will burn very soon. Now, the real Yggdrasil tree is multiple times bigger than many of the islands we've come across, especially since it's the home of colossal giants. And that tree is even giant and gianter than the giants. So, how in the world would a tree burn down like that without the biggest fire known to man? Now, what is the biggest fire known to man? The sun. See, what I'm getting at here is Loki would be able to burn down the tree if he had the sun fruit. It's the only devil fruit with enough firepower to burn down a tree of that size. Now get this, Yggdrasil is also known as the world tree. Emphasis on the word world. If Loki is able to burn the world tree, it would effectively be him beginning his ideal of destroying the whole world. And it would be the closest feat to destroying a world-sized landmass. Side note, if Luffy actually ends up beating Loki and he does have a sun fruit, then we could officially call Luffy a planet buster. But anyways, let's move on. I hope that we are starting to get the vision at this point. But if you haven't, there's one final piece of evidence that ties this theory all together in a beautiful knot. See, Oda has the habit of making Luffy train for the next great villain he will face. In the start of Time Skip, the defeat of Kaido was the main priority. But did you notice that Luffy was already specially trained to take down Kaido? In Ruskaina, Luffy trained against hundreds of giant beasts with strong haki until he was able to defeat them all at the end of the 2-year time skip. Now get this, after training against hundreds of beasts, Luffy goes to fight Kaido of the 100 Beast Pirates. This is not at all a coincidence. Oda ensures Luffy went through special training so that defeating Kaido made sense narratively. But would you believe me if I told you that Luffy has also unawareingly been training to fight against Loki's sun powers? You may be confused because as far as we know, there was no other training arc for Luffy. But this type of training is a bit more unconventional than usual. See, Luffy has been building a resistance to fire and heat. It all started when Luffy harnessed fire through his red rock attacks. Before, we were unaware of where his flame-based power came from, but after learning that Luffy is the sun god, it started to make a little more sense. I mean, why wouldn't the sun god have flame powers, right? But it's not only Luffy creating flames that's the most important here, but how he dealt with flames. Does anyone remember that weird scene with Luffy where Kaido hits him with a borrow breath and Luffy seems to be unaffected? Well, Kaido asked him how is it possible that his flames did not hurt Luffy, and Luffy answered by saying guts. Now of course, Luffy doesn't know what the heck he's talking about because guts is not enough to tank a fire that can destroy a mountain. I hypothesize that it's not guts at all, but rather it's Luffy's devil fruit that gives him a resistance to heat in general. See, back then I just had a speculation, but Luffy's battle against Kizaru finalized this idea for me. In Luffy's tussle with Kizaru, he does something absolutely ridiculous concerning heat resistance. He swallows a damn laser, like with his mouth. He ate a damn laser. Now I know many of you may have chalked this up to more Gear 5th Toon Force buffoonery, but not me. I actually think this is the same situation with Kaido's borrow breath. Luffy, being the sun god, has natural resistance to heat. This is even emphasized through Luffy surviving Kaido's last attack, Flame Dragon Drum, another heat-based attack that Luffy somehow has resistance to. Now, I know many of you may be thinking, didn't Luffy let go of Kaido because he was too hot? Well, let's take a closer look at that panel. See, Luffy letting go of Kaido because he is too hot is a huge red herring from Oda. If you think about it for a second, Luffy doesn't react how a normal person would react to touching magma. A normal person wouldn't just say, ow, that's hot. A normal person would have their hand completely vaporized being anywhere near close to Kaido, let alone directly touching his flames. This is made even obvious by the horns of Onigashima being immediately vaporized when Kaido comes in contact with it. See, while Oda is emphasizing how hot Kaido was, he's also emphasizing emphasizing how resistant to heat Luffy is by making it obvious that Luffy wasn't seriously burned as any normal person would be. This is how Oda has been subtly making Luffy train up his heat resistance progressively to the point where he can now swallow lasers. This theme of Luffy's heat resistance all snowballs into being extremely vital to defeating Loki's Sun God fruit. That's right, every single narrative element all amounts to Luffy fighting someone with overwhelming heat-based powers. That's why Loki has the Sun Logia Devil Fruit. That's the theory, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, a second huge shout out to Tekking and Worshin for making this theory possible. A link to their channels will be in the description below. But before I close out this theory, I know I had another theory regarding Loki's Devil Fruit being reality manipulation, and it does sound like this theory contradicts it, right? But what if it doesn't? What if Loki doesn't just have one Devil Fruit? That's a little teaser for my next theory. If you want this theory out as soon as possible, get this video to 1,000 likes and you can look forward to the next big middleweight theory.